Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello and welcome. Joining me today to share the 10 spiritual books that inspired her the most on her life journey is Deborah Cambio, a shamanic practitioner, intuitive guide, healing facilitator, and co-guardian of the acclaimed Wisdom Library, which you can see behind her. Deborah is a highly respected teacher, spiritual director, and life guide and coach. And her passion and her purpose are encouraging, empowering, and inspiring her clients and others to come into a fuller realization of their abilities, potential, and purpose. Deborah, welcome.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Good morning.
So, as the co-guardian of that renowned wisdom library behind you, which is home to more than 22,000 books, some of the world's most important books and some of the most ancient, I'm curious to know, how did you manage to distill your list down to just 10?
That's a very good question, because when you first asked me to do this podcast, Sandy, I don't consider myself an avid reader. And, look what I've got right in my home. However, I got most of my journey inspiration and guidance from people and experiences. But then when I just went a little deeper and did hone in on the books that did influence me, it was a great life review. And I'm really thankful for that. From my 20s to my 70s. And the books in this library are outstanding, profound. I'm told that Stephen and I have had many lifetimes together with the library, so I don't hang out in here too much. For that reason, I think I'm, at some level and somewhere in there, I know a lot about these books. And every now and then, when I'm ready, one will jump out at me, and a few that I've listed here have done that.
Exactly so, that. Okay.
So,
I, as somebody who has access to all of this, and I don't know how long you've had access to it in this incarnation, at least. When you got to the end of your life review, did you learn anything from that about the library, about your relationship with the library?
No, I can't say that I really did learn anything more than just being privileged to be a caretaker for this material, that's what we do. We caretake the information in here and preserve so that the information doesn't get lost. And there's a lot of profound, unbelievable information in this library, and it's just an honor to be a part of it. But as far as learning anything more, not
from your life review. Did you learn any more about yourself? I mean, sometimes we have thoughts about the past. We don't delve into it too deeply. But when we go on a journey like the one you've been on to create this list, we can often get surprised and have ahas that we hadn't seen.
Well, for me, it was just as I went along my lifetime, and I do tend to stay in the present moment. Yes, I think about the past and things like that. I don't attach too much to the past, but it was remembering, and it was so delightful to remember, wow, this is how I was in my 20s and then my 30s, and then now I'm evolving in 40s and 50s, and it was just fun to watch the cycle of evolutionary process within myself to where I've come from little girl in Pennsylvania, born there, to a lot of amazing experiences in between to living now in Sedona in bliss,
Mm.
basically bliss. It's so beautiful here, and I'm just so happy and comfortable in this bubble of ours.
Well, I would be very happy and comfortable sitting in that library, I can tell you for sure.
It does have its own energy in here. Truly
It
does have its own
certainly
energy.
does. And we're only
Mm,
seeing one small portion of it. But let's
mm.
start with your books. Now, the first book on your list, you've told me, is the first really spiritual book that you read.
Well, the first one that impacted me, I have not read it cover to cover, I must say. It is the Quran. And the Quran, again, this is with the life review. When you asked me to do this, I researched a little bit more to familiarize myself because I haven't read it cover
We've,
to cover.
we've lost your sound, Deborah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so when I went to review a little bit to prepare for today, I found in the very beginning how it was teaching about unification, unifying to source, your creator, and unifying within yourself, and how important it is to be unified within yourself to source, so that that can trickle down to your family, society, and nations. But it starts here within yourself. So that was a good reminder of staying present within yourself and connected to source. So the reason that this book was so impactful to me was that when I was 27 years old, I moved from New York to Phoenix, Arizona. And I was raised Episcopalian. I practiced until I was 18 years old. And at 18, I just didn't feel resonant with it any longer and knew that there was some supreme being. I didn't know exactly what it was, if it was light, energy. So I kind of went off on my own and wasn't really practice anything for about 10 years. Moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and I met a Muslim. I never knew anything about Islam, never knew any Muslims. And I was observing him and his family and found them to be quite extraordinary. They were practicing Muslims, praying and fasting, and during Ramadan. Ramadan is the month where you fast from sunrise to sunset, and you don't drink or eat anything all day. After sunset, then you're allowed to drink and eat. So a friend, we had a group of friends that 3 times a week we would go and climb a mountain for exercise and fun. And he was part of the group. And I noticed during the heat of the summer, in midday, after fasting all day, he had so much energy and he was going up the mountain, down the mountain, and I was quite impressed. So I thought, I'm going to try this just from the physical standpoint. I wasn't thinking religiously because that at that time in the 70s, it was people were coming into cleanses and diets and that kind of thing. And so I tried, and it was during Ramadan. And I, one night, uh, I was alone in my apartment, and I felt a presence in my apartment. And I thought it was maybe my grandmother because was ill, and I thought maybe she'd passed and she was coming to say goodbye to me. And when I thought that, I sat down on the ground, cross-legged. I was watching my abdomen. I was breathing from my abdomen, which was abnormal for me. I was noticing uh, odd behavior that I wasn't actually doing. It was as if I moved aside. I wasn't out of my body looking at myself. It was like I moved over, and this was coming through. And so I started to smell a fragrance that I was not familiar with. I learned later on that it was the incense frankincense. I then stood up, put my hands straight up, tilted my head back. Tears are streaming down my face. I feel this choking sensation, and I'm yelling out, "Praise be to God! Praise be to God!" And I'm thinking then, is my grandmother taking me with her? Because I really felt like I was choking. At that point, I was thrust forward, bent forward. And then I started thinking, am I ever going to see my friend again? And at that point, it was as somebody flipped my ankles and my feet, and I went down prostrate in prostrate position, and then it was over. And I turned over, and I had the most peaceful feeling I have ever had in my life. And I got up, wrote everything down, drove over to my friend's house. It was like 1 or 2 in the morning. And I read what happened. I told him what happened. He went to the Quran, and he read an excerpt, a paragraph that said, on the 27th night of Ramadan is the night of power. And on the night of power, the Archangel Gabriel will come and lift a burden from your soul. And when he read that to me, I was like, wow, that is exactly what happened to me. I have no other explanation. So at that point, I converted to Islam and changed my life forever. I married a Muslim American that he was a Saudi, but he was an 18 years citizen in the United States. We moved to Saudi Arabia, had 4 children, had all kinds of amazing experiences. So what was so profound about that is I was on a path, a very superficial path before then. And when this happened to me, the path was a completely different one and took me on this rich, adventurous, amazing journey that I've still been on. But that was the beginning. That was the beginning.
And so you didn't read all of the book, but you read enough to really impact you.
Yes, little bits and pieces. And then when I came back from Saudi Arabia, I came back right when the Gulf War was happening. So I was there for the entire decade of the 80s. And again, my guidance was more by meeting people and experiences that I had that were there in Saudi Arabia. The people that I met were so elegant, so beautiful, so kind, generous, loving. And I met all kinds because we were living in a compound that was Western, but all the different people from the world were there to build a city. That's what we were there to do. And I had incredible experiences with people from all over the world. But because I was married to a Saudi, I got to see really inside the culture and the people, and go to the mosques and feel what it was like to be in that energy, which was very profound and beautiful.
I was doing some research, and apparently, according to Muslim belief and Islamic scholarly accounts, the revelation of the Quran to Muhammad began in 610 CE, when the angel Gabriel appeared to Muhammad in a cave near the city of Mecca.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, most people thinking about the religions of other cultures would not expect Gabriel. It's a feature. People tend to think of Gabriel as a kind of Western, belongs to the West, doesn't belong in other religions.
And I did have the privilege to go to Mecca. I did do the Hajj. I did the pilgrimage. So I had all kinds of experiences there that were rich, rewarding. I was young. I was in my 30s, my childbearing decade. I didn't appreciate it as much as when I left it and looked back. And that was part of the life review, when I remembered going back and not appreciating as much as I would as I matured.
Yeah.
But it was a wonderful experience, regardless.
I'm sure it was. But you're not practicing that religion now, are you?
No, I I consider myself a spiritualist. I took from Christianity, I took from Islam. I believe in the love of all the religions. I have a realization that we have one source, one creator, that we all have different ways of honoring and practicing, and I honor all of them.
So let's move on to book 2, which is quite different. You
Yes.
Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, published in 1984. bit more modern. Um,
Yes.
how did this book come into your life?
Louise Hay. Well, I had been studying to be a massage therapist, and this was one of the books that somebody recommended. This book actually propelled me into the work I do today, in the fact that I learned that when we hang on to emotions long enough, they will manifest into the cellular level and create disease. And this book is just a short, simple, easy to read guide of if you're having a symptom or a disease, anything that's bothering you, um, you look up what that is. And then there is a list of emotional symptoms. It could be one or all that you relate to. And then there is an affirmation that you say and repeat that goes beyond consciousness. If you just repeat it, it goes beyond your consciousness and it actually helps to heal. And I became a true believer when one of my children at the age of 7 had a bladder infection. And I took her to the pediatrician. He could not do anything about it. So he recommended a specialist, pediatric specialist. And he wanted to do a biopsy on her bladder. He wanted to put her on a pharmaceutical for 6 weeks. And I wasn't going to have any of that. So I took her home. I got the book out. I read what the symptoms were. And are you having these feelings? And she said, yes, Mom. So I said, okay, we're going to do this affirmation. Every night before she went to sleep, we would do this affirmation together until she actually memorized it and would do it on her own throughout the day and whenever. Within 30 days, she was completely clear and it never came back. And that's when I became a real believer of how this works. So much so that if the kids went out and fell and they scraped their right knee, oh, well, let's go to the book. What does that mean? And they're like, oh, she's going to the book again. And now, as they're older and adults, they call me, Mom, can you look up in the book and see what this is? So that book was just fun. And I still use it today, amongst other ones. But
As do many,
was,
many other people. Yeah.
yes.
Book number 3. This is one that comes up often. Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. 1997 this was published.
Yes, Eckhart Tolle. I look at Eckhart Tolle as otherworldly. He's just so calm and is just the information that he has. The power of now helped me change behaviors in myself um, by not attaching to the past, not attaching to old wounds or memories that just don't serve, just attaching to things that keep me from being in the present moment. And also projecting things in the future or worrying about things in the future that aren't even here. Um, that was quite profound for me at the time. I was probably in my 30s when I was reading The Power of Now. Um, and it helped me to just practice. It is a practice. Being in the present moment is a practice. And I had something recently that came up that's an example of this. And I have 2 friends. They don't know each other. One of them has been out of work for almost a year and been trying to get work, gets interviews, but uh, doesn't come to fruition for whatever reason. And the other friend had this person also is into astrophotography and has a telescope. He's very knowledgeable in that field. And so my other friend has a telescope that was kind of too much. It was complicated and wanted to know if this person could help her. And so I reached out. They said yes, they would help. Um, I never heard back for maybe like 4 days. The person called me with the telescope. Or are they still wanting to do this? Never heard. So I said, you know what? Go ahead and see if you can find somebody else. And when I checked in with the other person, it appeared that they were stuck in the past of being upset because they're not getting a job and they're worrying about the future and they're not here. And they missed an opportunity. an opportunity that possibly could have afforded a work of an employment that would have been so amazing. Um, but it didn't happen. And that's where I find it's really important to stay in the present moment, because opportunities are coming all the time, all day, every day. And
Yeah.
if we're not there, we miss them.
And that's especially true of today. Yeah. So, book number 4, The Seat of the Soul, Gary Zukav, 1989.
Gary Zukov, he's another otherworldly person. He is just so calm, and his voice is so soothing, and again, profound information. Um, Gary Zukov. He in that book talked about multiple senses, multiple sensory, that we have more than the 5 senses, and intuition being one of them. And he also talks about the consciousness of the soul and the consciousness of the personality. And when you're the consciousness of the soul, that's where I was talking about in the Quran, where we have the unification with the source, and having that consciousness opposed to the personality consciousness of just what I need, what I want, what I need, personally. With the intuition, that helped me realize my gift of being able to be an intuit. I had an experience when I was a massage therapist at a resort spa, and I would be massaging the clients on the table, and all of a sudden I would hear information for the person on the table. And I knew it wasn't me thinking this, because it was a message. And I was like, in my head, having this conversation. No way, I'm not saying that to this person. It's very personal, and he will probably think, or they will think I'm losing it. They're in a spa hotel. And then after a couple of those that I didn't relay the message, I heard, "Who are you to not give the message from the spirit to this person?" And I was like, wow, you're right. This is a gift that a person that's passed over, they were people that had passed over that were giving messages to the loved ones that were still here. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to try it little by little. I tend to get a little emotional when I tell this story, but I had a young man, probably in his mid 30s. He was laying face down. I was massaging, and a presence was in the room. And at that point, I didn't know how to identify. I'm not a psychic, so I didn't hear names or anything, but I would hear the message. And the message was, "I am very proud of you." So I get a little. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to say it. So I told him, sometimes I hear from spirit. And when I told him, he started to cry. And when he started to cry, he goes, "That's my wife." And he said, "My wife passed away, and I'm raising my 2 boys, 5 and 3 years old. And she's very proud of you." And that's what she's saying. And he was so grateful and so happy that I told him that. And it gave me now permission and confidence and courage to say, okay, now I see what you mean.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
have been doing it ever since. I've been doing it ever since. And I strengthened my intuition and hearing and knowing by that book. And that I was having the soul consciousness rather than the personality consciousness.
That's beautiful example. So book number 5, it's interesting how often this one comes up too. Initiation by Elizabeth Hayes, published in 1953. I keep telling myself every time it comes up, I have to read this one. Haven't made it yet.
Well, this one is one that jumped out of the library for me. I was here probably 10 years, but I wasn't ready for it until then. So this one jumped out. This one, I haven't reviewed as well as some of the others, but the first thing that struck me with this book was that she was talking as she was remembering herself as a toddler. She was speaking from that age, like 18-month-old, and how she was observing her family and her parents, and how she was really an observer. The I am was speaking. And that was really interesting and brought a memory or a remembrance of how to do that, looking and observing from the I am, rather than the personality again. She also talks about karma and reincarnation, and that she was actually an initiate in Egypt with a high priest, and she was being initiated. And the book is about how she was being initiated, the guidance, and the karma of when we have things happen to us in our life that we so-called perceive to be so-called negative or horrible experiences. If we're able to look at them from a karmic view of we've actually sort of signed up for these experiences, and some people may really have a hard time with that because some of the experiences are harsh. But in my realization of some of people I've known that have had really rough experiences, that after they've been through them, turn out to be it was exactly what they needed, and it was actually the best thing for them. So that was, a remembrance of karma and reincarnation, and how we have, well, and we'll get into that later with the journey of the soul, but having our soul families. So that book was, yes. And actually, I need to read it again because it's pretty in depth with sacred geometry, and it gets into some real heavy duty stuff as well with the Egyptian initiation.
I'll have to move it up my list a bit. So we're going to take a short break now. You're listening to a No BS Spiritual Book Club interview and sharing the 10 best books that had the biggest impact on her life is Shamanic Practitioner, Intuitive Guide, Healing Facilitator, and co-guardian of the acclaimed Wisdom Library, Deborah Cambio. We'll be back with more of Deborah Cambio's most influential books and more insights into her life journey after this break.
Om Times TV.
Maya Angelou once said that there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and when I'm not hosting Om Times Media's flagship radio show What Is Going On and the No BS Spiritual Book Club, I help people share their untold stories. Books are my life, my joy and my passion, and there is no greater reward than helping aspiring writers get their books out of their heads and into the hands of those who are waiting to read them. If you feel that you have a book in you but don't know where to begin, visit sedgbeer.com, click on the Work With Me tab and find out how my experience helping others tell their stories might be just what you've been looking for. That's sedgbeer.com, sedgbeer.com.
Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Welcome back. Deborah Cambio, book number 6, Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. Are you getting any feedback from me? Because I'm hearing the echo of my voice.
No, it sounds clear.
Okay, it's just at this end. That's good. Good. Okay, that won't affect the recording. So Journey of Souls, Michael Newton, published in 1994. Tell us about this book and the role it played in your life.
Michael Newton, Journey of Souls was very interesting because it really broadened my horizons with where we go between lives. He was a hypnotist that had patients that he was hypnotizing to find out about past lives. But instead of going to the past lives, they went into the in-between life and where we have soul families. And that was interesting to me because we, according to Michael Newton, we reincarnate with this family, with this soul family. We come in as different roles. And that really rang true for me because one of my children, the mantra that I had growing up with her was, I'm the mother and you're the child. And so I was like, oh, there's something to this. That was one thing that really broadened my horizons, stretched me a little bit with knowing that. And again, reaffirming reincarnation. And the other thing that jumped out at me with this book was that the people that show you the most about who you are, that teach you the most about who you are your siblings and your spouse. And I thought that was interesting because watching my own children's siblings, it's interesting that they really do teach us the most about ourselves. They know us the most and longest. So
Agreed.
So that was the Journey of Souls.
Book number 7, Self-Unfoldment, Releasing and Developing the Inward Perceptions, Practical Instructions in the Philosophy of Disciplined Thinking and Feeling by Manly P. Hall, published in 1951.
Manly Hall is, okay, he's the one that jumped out to me in this library right away. He is a profound, one of the best philosophers of the modern era. And Self-Unfoldment, for me, is a book. It's 12 principles of disciplines. So it's a book, it's really a book of study of your personal development in many categories and the 12 disciplines, the 12 realizations have several disciplines within. So there may be 6 or 7 disciplines with the first realization or second realization. And it's just a wonderful self-guided, very deep thinking, thought-provoking study book of unfolding yourself to the highest degree. And I just love Manly. Manly's the favorite person in here for me. And there are many, but also I've been, my husband and I recently have been watching his videos on YouTube. He's got his lectures on there. So profound, so deep. I literally have to stop it after 20 minutes because the information, I can only take so much in my brain. It's like it soaks in there and then it's like, okay, I have to really contemplate what I've received. And this book is similar.
Yeah.
And I just hang on every word with him. So I highly recommend Self-Unfoldment by Manly Hall for self-improvement and understanding it.
So book number 8 is by one of my favorite guys, The Laws of Spirit by Dan Millman, published in 1995. I love his body of work.
Yes, Dan Millman, love this book. This one jumped out at me when I was raising my children. They were, by now, they were all in high school and one in college. And there are 12 laws: law of balance, law of choice. And actually, I have it right here. It's such a great book. I'm just going to read them because they're so wonderful. The law of balance, law of choices, process, the law of presence, the law of compassion, the law of faith, the law of expectation, the law of integrity, the law of action, the law of cycles, the law of surrender, and the law of unity. And it's really written cleverly because it's a story about a man going on a hike in the mountains, and he meets a sage, and the sage teaches him about these laws.
We've just to interrupt you a moment, we're losing your voice again.
Okay.
There we go.
Is this a little better?
That's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
This book is so well written. It's cleverly written. It's about a man that goes on a hike in the mountains and meets a sage, and she teaches him all these laws by experience, by exhibiting the things, so that he has like a kinesthetic way of learning. And I gave this book to I think she was probably a freshman in high school. I said, here, just read this book. It's really interesting. The next thing I know, she's walking around the house with a clipboard taking notes from this book. Now, this child was not a studious type child in school, so I was shocked. And that is her favorite book to this day. It is so easy to read. It's fun. And I had the privilege and honor of being in the school district in Scottsdale, Arizona at one point for the so-called, what they used to call them, I don't even like to use the word, alternative kids. They don't fit in the box. So they were put into a separate school. And I got called over to work there at one point in time. And so I used this book to teach the children. And they were 7th and 8th graders. And so I remember on one Monday morning, there was a young man that came, and over the weekend, he had a soccer game. And he was so excited. He ran up to me, goes, I want to let you know, I practiced the law of balance and I scored 2 goals. He was so excited, and I was beyond, because I'm reaching these kids with this book. And they loved it. And it's a wonderful book for our own adult self, but teach the kids and teach them young, because these are principles, values, morals that we don't see too much anymore in the world, at least that I don't see too much, especially with the youth. And when your parent is reading it to you, then you get it too. It's win-win for both. It's a great book.
Yeah. Book number 9, Animals Speak, The Spiritual and Magical Powers of Creatures Great and Small, by Ted Andrews, 1996.
Ted Andrews, yeah. I want to just read a little quote from Manly Hall. It says, when the human race learns to read the language of symbolism, a great veil will fall from the eyes of men. That's Manly. So the Animal Speaks book is just that. When you see an animal, a bird, an animal, anything, an insect that grabs your attention, that really gets your attention, look it up in this book, because there's symbolism there. There's messages there. There's guidance there. And the thing that was so profound this is several years ago, I've been into the Andrew book, Ted Andrews book, Animal Speaks, for quite a while. I use it all the time. But one winter, it was winter, outside of our bedroom window is a tree. There must have been 40 robins in this tree. And they were flying back and forth across the street to the neighbor's tree and then back to our tree. All of them, just back and forth. It was very, very highly unusual. So, of course, I ran to the book, because if that doesn't get your attention, I don't know what does. And the robin, I have it here. That is the spread of new growth is their main message. And the color blue is also important, because that's the color of their eggs that they lay. A couple other things here. They talk about parenting, feeding of their young. So it's just very interesting, the information that you would never think of by looking at a bird or a animal, but there really is symbolism, especially when it gets your attention.
So how did you
Especially-
interpret that particular incident? What were they
Well,
telling you?
at that time we were thinking of moving into a new place, and it was it didn't happen, but we did have new growth. We had new growth between our businesses, our relationship. It was a very profound information. And also, I remember distinctly seeing years ago, again, a praying mantis. I love praying mantis. They're interesting. They look like little aliens. And that particular insect is about stillness, about being still, and reminding you to meditate and get your information, again, connecting to that unification of source. And grasshopper is jumping and leaping forward and leap and bounds quickly. So, you're actually having a little bit of a guide of what's to come when you really pay attention.
Yeah,
So,
like
yeah.
picking a tarot card or something at random.
It is. It's similar.
Yeah. Well, that takes us into the last, I won't say book on your list, because it's not a book. It's actually card decks, plural.
Yes.
Although when I asked you to focus on one, you focused on the Mother Mary Oracle.
Yes. I do.
So protection, miracles, and grace of the Holy Mother. So tell us about this particular deck and why you love decks. Clearly, it's to do with the symbolism.
It is. It is definitely due to the symbolism. And I use card decks in my work. That's how I do my readings. They're very unique readings. They're not your typical tarot card reading. It's much different than that. And I use all kinds of decks. But the Alana Fairchild is one of my favorite decks, because she interprets so deeply, so profoundly, very spiritually. She has many decks. Mother Mary I chose because whenever I do need motherly advice and I'm really stuck with something, I go to my mother, and she always delivers exactly what I need to hear. And again, because it's written so beautifully and profoundly and deeply, you feel it. You really get it in your heart. You really feel it. You're hearing it in your head, but oof, it comes down. And all of her cards do that. And what else? Yeah, just basically that's
Do
why
you do you have one of her decks in front of you?
Oh, I don't. Oh my gosh.
You do.
I actually have Kuan Yin next to me today.
Okay, let's go off piste a little. Why don't you focus on the message for people about what is happening in the world today and see what card comes out?
I will be delighted to do that. So this is good, because this is an example of how I do my sessions when I choose my cards. I put the intention of what message do we need to hear as a collective for our highest and best in this moment. And it flew out, and that's what happens.
Yes.
So it's the higher, it's not me. And the card is Ivory Swan Goddess. And they're beautifully illustrated, by the way, as well.
Mm.
They really are beautifully illustrated. The Ivory Swan, and it's number 15. for those of you that are into the numbers. The ivory swan goddess speaks of spiritual grace and purity. The purity of your soul light never fades, beloved. Release guilt, shame, judgment, or fear that you are not enough in any way, so that you may realize your beauty. Be more of yourself and shine your divine essence into the world. So that is the main message here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much more into detail. I'd be happy to read. It's
I don't
3
know that we
paragraphs.
have time to read all of it, but
Okay. That's
what's
the main
interesting
message.
what's interesting about that is it does speak to this time, because I think many people, I think this is a very important time for people to understand that they are so much more than they have been conditioned to believe, and they need to shed a lot of the that conditioning, the conditioning that tells us all that we're not enough, that we have shame and guilt, etc. And I think this eclipse energy, the astrology for this year, is going to help people, move in that direction. So I personally feel that that's, a very timely card and very
Yes,
relevant.
I agree. And especially the word fear, because the fear is out there rampantly. And
Mm.
to begin to empower ourselves with our light, with our beauty, with our purpose and potential, that's where we are going to change things. And 2024, yes, it seems to be a very powerful year so far with changes and releasing and bringing in the new. So,
Mm.
yeah, the ivory swan.
So that's your 10 best list. Let's talk a little bit about you. Obviously, I am constantly looking at the scene behind you. What I want to know is, what is it like to have the responsibility for such an incredible resource as this wisdom library? Is that a light and joyful responsibility, or does it sometimes weigh a little heavy?
No, it's absolutely a joy and delight. Um, Preserving this information affords individuals that are seeking, and or the people that have information to add to the library. We're recently starting to add the autistic section that we didn't have before. So it's a privilege and an honor and a real joy, because we get so many interesting people come to the library to experience it and to bring what they have and educate us what they do. It's a real magnet, and especially being in Sedona, it's just like twofold. So it's just great. It's wonderful. It's a real honor and a privilege to again caretake for it and preserve it
And I would
yeah.
imagine that there's, no shortage of information. If you've got a question, hey, let's look for the answer in the library.
Except for when my husband Stephen had a woman and her little child come visit, and the little child says to Steve, "Do you have any books on pirates?"
Yeah. And do
So
you?
no. So we do have mostly philosophy, we have alchemy, we have science, we have um, all kinds of that kind of
Health.
material.
You have a lot
Health,
on
of
health,
course.
esoterica.
Health.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mm.
yes.
Have you ever tried to use the library like an oracle deck? Oh, I've got a question. Let me
Hmm.
walk around this library and see which book is going to give me the
Oh,
answer.
yes, absolutely. When I used to do my sessions in the library, I worked for a company here in Sedona at one time. And before I would do my sessions, I hone in, I reach the higher self of the client, And I would get guided. They would guide me to a specific book and to a specific page for the client. And that was a lot of fun. Yeah, that if I hone in on that, that still happens. I don't do it so much for myself, but I do it for others. Maybe I start doing it for myself a little. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you do private sessions for people, healing sessions, and you have a number of certifications: massage therapist, polarity work, aromatherapy, Reiki, other healing modalities. But when you are doing a session, it's quite different, isn't it? Than certainly, I think it's different than anything I've ever seen. That you bring in a number of different components, and you mix them all together, and you create a layout of cards and objects and different things that come to you. Now, would you say that the overarching thing there is shamanism, that it's the alchemical end that you
No.
are pulling in?
Well, alchemical, possibly. I could use that word. But no, the shaman is a tool. It's part of a tool. I don't consider myself a shaman. I would never label myself a shaman. I'm a way shower. I'm a facilitator of the individual's higher self, telling you what you need to hear, see, feel, and know in this moment. And I am the vehicle that presents that information. And it is very unique because it's been divinely given to me. The card readings, I evolved. Everything that I've somewhat described in our time today has led me up to being who I am today, and being able to do what I do, and much more than I spoke of today. But it's a process and an unfoldment to where I do the cards. Your higher self guides me to the decks, and many, and to the definite cards. And then we piece it together like a puzzle so that it tells a story of what you need to hear, see, feel, and know in that moment. And then we delve deeper into what the reading is verbally. And once we do that, then we go on to the table. On my massage table, you'll be fully clothed, and that's when the tools start coming out. And I only know in the moment. I call on all your guides. I call on my guides. We're all in that room together, creating this medicine space for what is really important in that moment for the individual. It could be a visualization technique, color therapy, hands-on body. I don't really do full body massages any longer, but if I feel there's an area that I'm guided to that's blocked, I'll go there. Energy work, chakra balancing. It just depends on the individual, what they need. It's always different. And it's always a release. It's always letting go of something that no longer serves them so they can reach that highest purpose and potential and feel empowered.
And that's the theme, isn't it? Again and again, we're hearing it in this conversation today, reflecting what's going on in the world. It is about releasing what doesn't serve us individually and collectively. Have you
Yes.
noticed that, many people are saying that this time now, the veils are becoming very thin. There's a huge increase in an expansion of awareness, overlapping dreams, all kinds of, psychic phenomena, telepathy, etc. that's happening in people's lives. Have you noticed a difference in the work that you're doing? That it's easier to connect, or that you're suddenly tapping into things in a way that you might never have done before?
Recently, yes, what I've noticed is the information is coming much quicker. I don't have to wait as long for the information to come in. It just comes in like that. I ask, boom, it's there. Um, and that's really great. I really enjoyed that. It just is fun, and it's like exciting when something comes in so fast, not just for my clients, but information that comes in that I don't even ask for it. It's like, boom, it's right there. Um, yes, again, 2024, there's something about this year that I feel is really special, and it's time. It's just time. We've all been conditioned from the minute we come out of the womb, for better or worse. And there really is no better or worse, to be honest. It's just an experience.
Yes.
And what we have as children, the experiences we had then was to survive. And then when we get out of childhood and we're out on our own, some of those survival techniques, they don't serve us anymore. And we're stuck with them. We're conditioned to them. They're habits that we're not even sometimes consciously aware of until we get into sessions and help from other people that can help us release those things.
Yeah.
And that is happening. I can see it happening really fast now.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Well, one last question before we close. What do you call this unique process that you've created?
I call it YES, YES, Your Empowered Self. And right now I'm creating a website. I don't have it up quite yet, but I do have a email if anyone's interested in contacting me.
Please give us your email.
My email is Deborah, DEBORAH .cambio, CAMBIO at gmail.com. No, I'm sorry. Deborah.cambio7 at gmail.com.
The magic number. Deborah Cambio, thank you so much for adding your 10 best list of spiritual books to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library of recommendations.
Thank you, Sandy. And I just want to say one last quote from an unknown source. The book of life is ours to write.
Absolutely.
And that's it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us. That's it for this week. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. I'll be back at the same time next week with another 10 best interview for the No BS Spiritual Book Club. Till then, it's goodbye from me. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.